Yeah, yeah. We kind of were like, well.
There's never gonna be any way out of this stuff. You know?
Yeah, and.
But we have town speak for almost 3 hours. And at the end, they say, you can't take any action. We have no energy fighting them.
Yeah. That was part of the issue. We had to go to lawsuit because sued us. Just like,
The paintball, as you know, it's like.
Here comes Mary.
yeah,
He's gonna sit up here.
This is important.
it is like solved by police. It's right the first time.
Yeah.
What happens now?
Little you know, I love to sit up front. I spent my entire college right in the front row.
All right.
That way I could shoot Professor saw my hand.
We did see this like a little bit of a psychology experiment.
Guys ready to start?
Yeah.
Yeah, if you thought you were scaring me. it's not gonna work.
You guys have seen, we've seen each other on screen, but I'm Pat Van, currently chairing this committee. Before we even kick off today, we got a lot of stuff to cover. I would just like to offer up a moment of silence for the loss of a friend and colleague, Marco Gonzalez, who left us so much too soon, and offering peace and comfort to his wife and his family as they do. So please bow your heads for me. So we don't often get together. There's a lot of faces, new faces that we have every month as well. So why don't we take a minute and just introduce ourselves? Don't let me forget the people on the screen side. And we'll start over here.
Kim Hardy with Hope Partnership.
Eric Gaff, ladies coordinator, Town of Old Line. Daniel Smith, Deep River.
Howard Margulies, Planning Commission, Old Lines, and co-chair of the real conflict for the Housing Strategic Planning Steering Committee. We heard that.
We won't make you stay together.
Good.
George Frampton, also Old Line, and also co-chairman of this steering.
Barrett Kazakowski, Director of Land Use for the City of Middletown.
Brett Benton, Old Line, Affordable Housing Commission.
Grace Branstad, I'm the regional planner for Litchfield County Council of Government, here to learn today.
Dan Sear, Westbrook, planning. Eric Torp, Town Hill.
Steve Zeller, Town of Line.
I was in the Town of Line.
Dave Ballgaier, I'm Westbrook's new CEO.
Chip Ventures, East Adam.
Dan Murray, town planner for the town of Portland.
I'm McMurray, Westbrook Town Planner. Carrie Diaz, land use official for the town of Essex. Zoe Chatfield, zoning official for Vancouver.
Just girls team consultant.
Susie Beckman, the regional planner here at and we have taken together in
Hi, I'm Eliza Lepesti, Rivercog.
Nicholas, Deputy Director, Riverside, and Harley Pearl, Communications.
So nice to see everybody. It is, I know it's convenient to be virtual, but it is very nice to get together. So who do we have on the?
It's set up like a webinar, so we won't see them. This is just us.
But
Prevost, Samantha, Speaklish.
Okay, so now.
Nick, Rissa, and Thomas, if you cannot hear us, can you throw that in one of the chats?
If you can hear us also.
All right, the first order of business though, before we dive into this, approval of the June 23rd, 2026 meeting minutes. They were distributed with this month's meeting agenda. Can I get a motion to approve?
Motion to approve?
Second,
Second.
any discussion, comments on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right.
Can you
motion
see the
passes.
chats? I know I can't, my mouse isn't like going back and
All
forth.
right, ladies, back in your courts.
I can start it. All right, welcome, everybody. We're really excited to see you all here. Obviously, we had a bigger turnout than anticipated, which is a good problem to have. So we're very happy to see you all here. We hope this reflects some enthusiasm for the project, and we're excited to get into it. So today is our first housing needs assessment workshop. We're going to explore data input for determining regional housing needs. And our focus isn't going to be to produce a single number, especially not today, but really to understand the policy decisions that go into coming up with that number and try and get on the same page about what we want those decisions to be. By the end of today's workshop, we hope you'll have a clearer picture of how housing needs is calculated, as well as an agreed upon policy direction for data inputs. You'll begin to understand the major components that go into determining housing need, see how different factors influence the results, and explore how data assumptions affect the outcomes, and hopefully gain familiarity with the overall calculation process. We'll start with a brief refresher on the material from your homework presentation before diving into the interactive exercise. But first, a pop quiz. So I hope everybody did their homework. What is the primary purpose of a housing needs assessment? Take a minute to look at the 4 choices and choose the answer that seems most accurate. Is it A, understand the major components of housing need? B, see how different factors influence results? C, explore how assumptions affect outcomes? Or D, gain familiarity with the calculation process? Remember, this is of a housing needs assessment, not of this presentation. Final answer? Okay. A. Correct answer is A. This is understanding is the foundation of everything else. So without defining the problem, we can't develop a solution. Next question. Why is a housing needs assessment important? Because it guarantees immediate housing construction. It supports evidence-based policy, growth planning, and investment. It replaces local housing policies, or it focuses only on existing homeowners. Is it B? Yay! The correct answer is B. It supports evidence-based policy, growth planning, and investment. Think about what an assessment can realistically accomplish. It can't guarantee construction, it can't replace local policy, and it doesn't focus only on one segment of the population. So instead, a needs assessment gives decision makers a shared factual foundation. It helps communities identify priorities, evaluate possible strategies, and direct attention and resources towards the housing challenges that are demonstrated by the data. Next question, why might housing needs be evaluated regionally? Is it because every municipality has an independent housing market, because regional assessments require fewer data, because housing markets and challenges extend across municipal boundaries, or because regional planning eliminates local priorities? All right. The best answer is C. Housing markets and challenges extend across municipal boundaries. Residents may live in one municipality, work in another, and use services or visit family elsewhere. A regional assessment recognizes these connections while still allowing communities to retain their individual identities. Looking regionally can reveal shared pressures, opportunities, and trends that may be difficult to see when each municipality only examines data that's within its borders. Our fourth question asks, Which sequence represents the three main components of a housing needs assessment? Is it construction, inspection, and taxation, determination, allocation, and accommodation, population, employment, and transportation, or funding, zoning, and enforcement? Can't be too predictable.
See,
It is B. The, the correct answer is B, determination, allocation, and accommodation. Determination establishes how much housing is needed. Allocation considers how that need is distributed across the region. And accommodation considers policies, plans, and actions that can help meet it. They were concentrated primarily on the first component, which is determination of need. And our final review question. Maybe.
Sorry. I don't know why my mouse only wants to come down here when I do this.
Can be a really questionable thing.
Sorry, guys. I don't know why this is happening.
Can you use your keys?
No, no, I cannot. This was working before. It was like coming down here. Oh,
This table is missing a leg. Oh,
God damn it.
I'm told it already had a crack in it before we started moving things.
All right, here we go.
Okay. Our final review question focuses on the state's statutory requirements for the regional housing needs assessment. Which statement best describes those requirements? A regional methodology must exactly duplicate the state methodology. Only population growth may be considered. Regional methodology should be based on state targets, but may include regional nuance, or municipal feedback is not required. All right. The best answer is C. Regional methodology should be based on state targets, but may include regional nuance. This gives the region a common starting point while allowing the methodology to reflect its own housing market and community conditions. Municipal feedback remains an important part of developing a credible regional approach. That's why we appreciate you all being here. All right, I'm going to pass it over to Eliza to get us going.
Okay, so housing need is typically measured through three components: current and future need and target vacancy rate. Current need asks whether today's supply is sufficient for the households that we currently have. Future need estimates additional units to accommodate future growth, and target vacancy recognizes that a healthy market needs some available housing to support mobility and choice. Together, these components form the total housing need estimate. So if you looked at the presentation, this diagram should look familiar to you, the one that Megan recorded. It shows how different data inputs connect to the calculation of total housing need. The key takeaway here is that in assessing need, we're simply comparing people to units, supply and demand, for current and future population. But these are not simple numbers, so we're using a collection of data points that either increase or decrease the number of people or the number of units that we compare until we feel we have a good approximation of the need. Each data choice is a policy decision. Some are required by statute and some we do have flexibility to choose. So what we will choose is part of today's conversation. For the bulk of the workshop, we're going to conduct an exercise using a visual simulation that we've created called the Housing Need Calculator. The calculator begins with the total population and allows us to toggle different data inputs to see how they affect the estimated housing need. We'll review each input factor, test each one, and then observe how the total need changes or sometimes doesn't. Our goal is to understand the relationship of the different factors into the calculation and to decide which non-mandatory factors are important for us to include in our initial needs assessment. Remember that this is just a first pass. Once this formula is created, we're going to provide an opportunity for you to get feedback from your town's working groups and discuss adjustments from there. So to keep this exercise conceptual and focused on policy, we are not working with our real regional numbers, although the scale and direction of the changes that we put in the calculator are proportional. So welcome to fictional Anyregion. It's home to any town for those of you who have looked or done our shared foundations lessons. Anyregion is a collection of 12 communities in the Silver Pine River Valley with a population of 10,000. It includes rural communities, villages, and employment centers. Although each community has its own identity, residents regularly move across municipal boundaries to live, work, shop, and recreate. Disclaimer, any resemblance to actual communities is purely coincidental. So here's what the calculator looks like that we're going to use. It's organized to match the formula graphic from a few slides back with the current population and housing on the left and future population and housing on the right. And as we change the inputs, the center display helps us visualize how housing units and total need change. Oh, watch me pull up the calculator. Let's see how we can do this.
For those of you who were here with us last year, we upgraded from our budget paper.
Yes. Was that last year?
You?
Where are you? Sorry, guys. I'm like the worst person on staff to be doing this. Well, yeah, it was. So it should be here. Is it because I just had it minimized? Oh my God, why? I don't know if I can. Can I do that? No.
Oh, okay.
Okay, we'll just be scrolling.
That's cool.
Cool, cool, cool. All right. Okay.
All right. So I'm going to walk us through this. Are we good?
Yep.
Okay. So Anyregion has a population of 10,000. We can see the population at the top. And if you scroll down, Eliza, you can see that number for housing need for the region is blank right now. The first thing we need to do is understand that we're not planning for individual people, we're planning for households. So the first thing we have to do is click on household size, right? We're grouping our population into households. So Anyregion has 4,651 households. I'm not going to make anybody do math if that's not your thing here. The program is going to do it for us. All right, and then the next thing we want to do, does anyone want to guess what we have to toggle next if we're trying to figure out if we have enough housing units on the current housing side? There you go. So we have 4,847 available units as compared to 4,651 households. So it looks like our housing need for the region is 0. Any questions so far? Okay. We're good. It looks like it, but not quite. So looking at population, maybe we just want to start going down the population side first. What do you want us to click? We've got renters and owners, we've got income, we've got cost burdening, we've got homelessness, we've got group quarters. And these are all data inputs that can be used to influence the current population.
What are group quarters?
What are group quarters, if anybody missed the question? So group quarters are things like dorms, nursing homes, prisons, military barracks. They're groups of people that don't necessarily live in a housing unit. Yeah, communal living, exactly right. So if we click group quarters, our number of households goes down. and we have more available units because the people that are living in group quarters don't need those housing units. So you can,
With the housing needs went up.
No, I don't.
No.
It was zero.
no,
Yeah.
so,
Oh,
right, so it's green. If we get need, it's gonna turn red.
oh, I see. Thank you.
So what is the actual operator? Click on group quarters, is it a factor or?
So if you click on group quarters, what it does is it subtracts from the number of households that need housing units.
What? Relative portion of the number of housing?
It's a count of people that are living in group quarters. So in an actual, this is really conceptual. We're trying to show proportional change. What we want everyone that's here to walk away with is an understanding of how these factors influence the overall need. When we put together an actual formula, what would happen with group quarters is because they are individuals, that number would be subtracted from the total population before we grouped households.
Oh, okay, so ultimately there would be an input, which is a numerical value.
Yes, correct.
And that's what goes in that.
Yes. Exactly right.
And where do the numbers that you're using for this exercise come from?
So
Are they averages across a number of, that they're based on some reasonable estimate of what some of the towns in River Cog actually have? But they're not equal to any of those.
Again, it's a conceptual exercise to see what the difference is. They should be proportional in scale and direction for the regional numbers. We started with regional numbers and we niceified them to make them nice and round and smaller and easier to conceptualize with this calculator. But the data comes from, and will ultimately in the calculation come from, mostly census data, some CHAS data, which is what's used by HUD. And was there another one? I think it's it, CHAS and ACS.
Yeah, for now.
So census
Overall, the percentages you've used are close to what you think the total River Cog numbers are for things like group housing or size of building.
Yeah, we did proportional. So we just, I mean, obviously the region is not 10,000 people, but we use that as the base and then, yeah.
So
Roughly. For all of the towns in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Seasonal next.
all right, so seasonal, interestingly, affects units
Well-
as as opposed to households. Seasonal is really classified in the census as units that are vacant for seasonal, recreational, or other, so not on the market. And that detracts from the number of housing units that are available for year-round residents. So as you see, now our need has turned red. We've subtracted a pretty substantial supply of units out of the units that are available. And now our need is 145 units per current household. So you see how those toggles really can take us from needing 0 units and looking like we have a surplus to having a need.
How about uninhabitable?
All right.
Thing, right?
Yep, same thing. So units that are uninhabitable are those that are lacking plumbing or kitchen facilities. That subtracts from the available housing units as well.
What else?
Yeah,
What
what
do you
else?
guys wanna
Give
say?
us more. We're on a roll. Interesting choice. So renters and owners, you'll notice, does not change the number of households that we have, but what it does is it categorizes them. So this tells us something interesting about who needs housing, but it doesn't increase or decrease the number of people that need a unit.
House as a housing unit?
No, takes
it's
it off.
subtract.
Yeah,
But before you clicked on it, it was still in your
it
list.
was still in there. Yes. So we've subtracted that.
So why was it included in the first?
Yeah.
So we started with the unit totals. These are the units that exist. And then we're subtracting.
Why is it counted as a?
As in the census data, does the census data include uninhabitable
Right.
units? So census data includes units that are inhabited. So it could be a unit that is inhabited, but that should not.
Those would be the units that need to be replaced or
Replaced or upgraded.
they still exist and the cost to change them might be significantly less depending on the state that they're in. So
Correct. All right. What else? We're staying on the current side for now.
Also, I'd like to add the ones with the asterisks are the factors that we are required by statute to consider in the housing needs assessment, just
Or
so you know.
that must be considered in order for us to make an assessment,
Yeah.
like a house, like household size.
So what goes into cost burden?
Right. So we want to start with income before we get to cost of living.
Do I need to click this one off?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we'll start with income. Again, so this is something that is required to be considered. And it's not changing the number of households that we have, it's grouping them by the area median income, which percentage bracket of area median income households fall into in any region. So you can see the breakdown from 30%, 50%, 80%, and then over 80%. And that breakdown is CHAS data, which comes from HUD, which is a special HUD tabulation of census data. And then if we go cost burdening, that tells you within those income bands, how many households are spending more than 30% of their income on their housing costs. What on earth? Why do we have that enthusiasm?
I don't know. All right, I'm going to click those off so we can keep going. And if we look at homelessness, here's what happens.
So homelessness is adding households that need a unit.
Not very big number.
It's not.
I think we have the least amount of homelessness in the state in our region, or that's what
very
I've heard.
low.
It's very small. Yeah.
Yeah, it's very low. And honestly, it's notoriously
Undercounted.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
But I'm sort of struck by the fact that it's like a really, really low number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and especially when we took the regional numbers and shrunk them for the purpose
Yeah,
of the
only
conversation,
10,000
it got
people.
even smaller.
So with cost burdening, considering in some of our areas of the region, a lot of people on fixed income, how is the cost burden calculated? Or is it based on like a mortgage or rent or tax?
That
Or-
I might have to get back to you on how cost burdening is calculated. There is background data on how it's calculated from CHAS that I would be happy to pull and provide, but I don't know that.
I'd be happy to learn because in Deep River, we have people on fixed income that are in fact homeowners. You know, it kind of muddies it up
Right,
a little bit,
yeah,
as
yeah.
opposed to people that are working 2 jobs and trying to, afford their rent.
Are you asking about like the rather than the data behind it, the definition of cost burden is
Yes.
it's 30 if you're spending 30% or more of your income
What?
on housing
And housing related.
and housing related costs. Yeah. So
Right.
yep.
What's your tax?
Yeah.
Thanks, John.
And then is it very cost burden? Is that
Extremely.
extremely cost burden. That's if you're spending 50% or more of your income on those same things.
Affordability is the last asterisk one we have to click.
All right. So this is kind of the counter analysis if you want to put income back on again. So this is an interesting comparison and an exercise that we are going to have to do as part of the housing needs assessment. It's not changing the total number of units here, but it is telling you about the income of households versus the affordability of the units, which cost bracket each of those units would be affordable to.
there are two there that are, sorry, three there that are blank colored, not 30% of the neighborhood.
Yes, there is.
Wondering, I'm asking, is that like intentional or is that just the nature of the Excel?
You know what it might
I think
be.
it is intentional because it's over, those units are over. Right?
Over 100%?
No, I think it's, I think it is if Kevin, so Kevin.
Pat's on vacation, by the way.
I think we might have taken it literally from the CHAD data. There were some that did not have a category. And that might be, yes. Kevin did an amazing job.
He did.
Let the record reflect.
We're very, very happy with Kevin's work. And on this side, we didn't yet talk about tenure.
We gotta unclick.
Hello.
All right, so again, and if you want to click on renters, and this would match because the way they're calculated right now in the census is even. But these are the units that are for purchase versus for rent, or have been purchased and have been rented, I think would be a more accurate way to say that. So again, it's not changing your numbers, but it is telling you the comparison of what might be missing for the people who are here.
I'm just gonna click overcrowding.
Let's just do it. So overcrowding is interesting, and we had to simplify it for the purposes of this exercise because overcrowding is adding to the need. It is more than one person in a room, in a unit, not in a bedroom, in a room for a unit. So that's where households are doubled up, for example. Those are currently households living together in one unit, but should really be living in more than one unit. So that increases your need for housing supply. That's why technically it impacts people, but we put it on the units.
That's not quite homelessness, but it's the nearest thing to homelessness.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. And then vacancy, as mentioned in the presentation earlier, you don't just want one unit for each household, because then there would be no room for people to move around. That's where you get a really tight housing market. Someone has to leave in order for someone else to move in. That drives up cost because it drives up competition for each unit. So we put some choices here that you could see. All of these would be an acceptable range for vacancy. 5% could still be a little tight depending on the market, but you have choices of 5, 7, and 10. Name your poison. What would you prefer?
5.
5. All right. So now, based on current needs, Anyregion needs 276 units if all of these factors are included. And that's just for people who currently are here. That's what we would consider our underproduction. All right. Now we're moving into the future. We're not required to look at future housing need. However, this is a 10-year plan. So if people move in and you're only planning for current underproduction, then in 10 years' time, you'll probably find yourself right back here again. So good to look into the future to see who we might expect to move here.
So I kind of
Yeah.
thinking when I was, how does affordability affect housing need?
Right. All right. So can we go back? Affordability is telling us, when we say affordability in this context, we're talking about how affordable our existing housing supply is for the households that are here, right? So when we're looking at household income, we're looking at the breakdown of area median income that our households are falling into, right? When we're looking at housing unit affordability, we're looking at how many units could be affordable in each of those income brackets. And there is a discrepancy between the units in each bracket and the people or the households in each bracket. That difference doesn't necessarily change the number of units that are needed, but it does change the configuration of units that are needed. Right, and that's going to be an exercise that we're going to have to look into once we've decided what this final number is.
Affordability really does not affect that one.
It affects need, but it doesn't but need in this case doesn't necessarily equal a new unit. Does that make sense?
Well, it also affects what you would need to build to satisfy that, because putting 100 units at the top end isn't gonna be helpful to people at the lower end.
Very true. And we will talk about how we're going to handle the grouping. We have some slides about that when we're back, but what a preview of what we're thinking initially is we would look at the total number of units needed, and we would look at that discrepancy between the units we have and the people that we have, and we would use that to determine how that number at the bottom is going to be kind of sliced and diced.
There is a state mandate for certain level of affordability, is that?
You mean, are you talking about 830G?
Yes.
And the 10%?
No.
Okay.
Is there a state mandate other than 830G for level of units?
Not a number of affordable units, no.
Percentage?
Percentage is only the 830G 10%. Now, we are required as part of this housing needs assessment to understand and come up with a number of affordable and deeply affordable units that we will plan for as a region, but there isn't a set number of how much that has to be.
So why are we looking to establish a number of affordable units if that does not figure into the need,
It will figure into the need.
but not on this?
DOH, they've asked the COGS to do this, and we can talk about that a little bit, why, as opposed to the exercise we did last year, which was just for us.
Right.
This number will, or could possibly have bearing, because
So we're looking, okay. Do you want to start, Daniel, for where you want to go with this? Or do you want me to-
well, the legislation wants a number of allocations,
Yes, correct.
yet the state through DOH they don't want to come up with that number. Good for them. And they've cast it back onto the COGS to ideally work with the communities to come up with that number. So as opposed to last year, which was a working number for us to have an understanding, this could be a number that if they decide to go with it, which is no certainty that they even will after we present these numbers, that we will be, I don't want to use the word obligated, but that's going to be the number. So if just like in our exercise, if Deep Rivers asks to allocate 46 units again, we will be responsible for coming up with the plan to have 46 new units
Right.
somewhere, maybe
Right.
one big tower, or something.
We're supposed to plan for the units, they don't have to be.
Yeah, just plan.
Correct. Right. Plan and
We
zone.
have to show that we plan for those 46. That's correct.
Yeah, no, that's correct. So, all right. Does, I see a shaking head, so that doesn't answer the question. Thank you. Dan.
You're supposed to establish a need. But affordability doesn't affect the number of needed units.
So affordability will impact how these needed units are allocated into income brackets. There will also be an understanding of any gap that isn't accounted for in new units. We're going to have to come up with strategies for how to make existing units more affordable. Or you could say, we want them all to be new units, and you could choose to plan for all new units that way as well. That would be a local choice.
You're asking of the word to me, affordable. The state somewhat backed off, right? It's like any housing is good housing now. It doesn't necessarily have to be affordable. Is that?
No, the state is very specifically looking for a number of deed restricted affordable units at, at these different AMI.
And that's the key, deed restricted.
Yeah.
Our region
We have.
doesn't have a great deal.
Yeah, we don't have it.
Yeah,
Good.
Most
So
houses
there
are.
is a state mandate,
Yes,
Yeah,
it's not expressed in percentage or
correct.
based on what you assess the need
To be.
for affordable needs. And
Correct.
is that outside today's presentation?
No, it's definitely part of today's presentation. So that's kind of what you're looking at here. We're establishing the number of households that we have and the number of units that we have and the difference between that. And that is a very concrete number of new units that need to be built. Correct. So from those new units that need to be built, we would take this gap analysis and apply that breakdown of AMI percentage to the new units. That would give us affordability brackets. Yes, yeah. And then in addition to that, that might not cover all of the discrepancy between households and units. So anything on top of that, we would be looking at different strategies. That might not be a new unit, or it might be, but that would be kind of town dependent.
Oh.
If you remember the spatial mismatch, structural mismatch conversation, do you remember the paint bucket graphic that was made by Marcos? That was an issue that we took as a committee with Eco Northwest's analysis last year, which was they were saying every person, every household that can't afford a housing unit should have a new housing unit, and that's the need. And we're saying, if you say you need, 200,000 new units for the population that already exists, who's going to live in the existing units? There was an oversupply of new units. So this is our answer to that, to say you need a balance of people and units with enough flex for people to be able to move around, and you need to target those units into specific income brackets. There might be additional need on top of that, but that does not necessarily mean it's a need for a new unit. It might be a different kind of need for a different kind of program to make existing units more affordable.
Does anyone have more questions about that?
Should we drop a mic?
I mean, to be very clear, what we're doing now is we are talking about how we're creating the methodology to come up with, this is going to be the plan for the formula.
So what we're trying to get on board with is to understand, we're looking at people, we're looking at houses, we want sort of that balanced mix, but number of people or number of households and number of units are not just a straight, I'm pulling this number, I'm pulling that number, and we compare them and that's the end. There are a bunch of data points that go into both of those. Should we move on to the future?
Straining to understand the person.
The questions, I think, is, at least for me, is because I wouldn't know how to ask the question yet.
That's fair. That's
Okay,
totally fair.
Just learning. But I have a ton of them kind of mixed up here.
But there's a realization that this is solely for planning, because even if we, through regulation, permit every unit in town to have a duplex, and then we double our units, if none of them are deed restricted, we still haven't met demand.
Yeah.
Right. But you might be in a better place in general.
Yeah, in general, yeah. That's the goal, a better place.
And the other part of the whole affordability aspect would be that even if you don't create those deep restrictive problems, if you are creating more of a housing supply, then all the factors which impact that cost burden would be impacted as well. If you have a broader tax base, your taxes per unit are not going to be as the cost to purchase a new home is, you're not going to be competing as much, so that's not going to increase as much. Obviously there are other factors on the other side, but this is a good start, but we have to keep in mind that it's a starting point, not the end result, and there are going to be other factors that impact things.
Yeah, absolutely.
If hurricane comes through and wipes out New Haven, like
Oh,
people are gonna, I usually use Florida flooding as an example, but I'll use the more local example this time. So since it is hurricane season.
Want everybody to know. What's the model for people who in the community will downsize and increase demand for a less expensive home, increase their more expensive home on the. So it is a snapshot.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good
That's the
question.
model for people in the community or downsize and increase demand for a less expensive home and place their more expensive home on the market. I think the short answer, and Eliza, you can jump in, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's a snapshot in time. So if you're projecting people to leave, that's going to be part of the future population that we're looking into. But it's not going to impact your current need because you are taking a snapshot of what is happening, the date the data is old.
But, that's why I asked about how the cost burden is defined, because we have a large number of units that have seniors that would like to age in place, and they'd like to get out of those homes, but there are no, that's why we're here, we'd like housing for them.
Yeah.
To be able to stay in place. I don't see how this model accommodates for that.
Yeah, and I mean, that could be something that we're thinking about when we're looking at, how we're grouping the new units. We can put that into those considerations. We can think about what that means for the overflow, anything that's not accommodated in new units. Is that going to be influenced by these changes? It's more of a policy conversation. We can't model that.
The other thing that doesn't get factored in, and I'm not sure there's an easy way to do it, you have a lot of very old housing that is deteriorating. And some of that's going to just become uninhabitable over time as well. And that's not really being modeled in here anyway, that we're going to lose housing off the back end as it gets old and deteriorates.
Yeah. There might be a factor, and in fact, at the end, we have questions about factors that are missing, and there might be a factor for projected loss of properties that, to deterioration, if they're not brought up, there might be a factor for that. I feel like the state might have been considering one, but I'm not positive.
Yeah, I don't know.
Well, just to push back. That's kind of just push back. There are a number of older houses or units that can be maintained. That may be such a small factor that it's not. Kind of like how homelessness is tracked, but I'm thinking of the number of old houses that we have that are like 1600s, 1700s that are in good condition, but just a little bit more to impact. But yeah, there are. I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying
My
what.
concern is even people who are already stressed about having
Yes.
housing, to do the upkeep, keep
Right.
the housing viable, maybe beyond the need.
Yeah.
That could very well be a strategy when we get into the actual housing growth plans as some sort of program to help maintain units. Yeah, I think that's.
Yeah,
great.
especially in our state. I mean, we have old housing.
People and buildings.
Yeah. True.
And so keeping housing units online and
Yeah,
functioning is part of a housing strategy. Absolutely.
Just to show how much I don't understand things. If you've got X number of housing units available, and you got X number of households, and they equal, the answer is always zero. But like
Yeah.
in any town, you have X number of population living in X number of houses, assuming there's no homelessness out there, it's equal.
Mhm. That's
So,
fair.
so how did it all change with all these other variables?
Do you want to take it?
I'll take that. I'll use a personal example. So, if there is a household, but half of that household is looking for housing in the region, you're lacking. You're lacking a unit or 2 units, depending on if the 2 people who are in their 30s want to move out of that household.
Too much information.
But I'm just saying, from the perspective of population dynamics, I think it's like 10% of
It's a lot.
people that are under the age of 40 and of adult age are still remaining in their household. So that is that would probably fall under the not really overcrowding, but it's close to overcrowding.
Part of it,
Still.
yeah.
Also, the vacancy rate can help with that because by increasing the level of supply, you're providing more opportunity for people to move.
Yeah, and you see now, we just put current for vacancy rate, but we're at like a 2.4
Here.
like in
Yeah.
real life, that's our vacancy rate, and you can feel that housing crunch, right? Like my parents would love to downsize and go somewhere else, but
Exactly.
there's literally nowhere. Yeah, or it would cost twice as much as where they are now, right? If they could find something. And so a lot of our household formations are happening because of like what Eric just said. You have adult children that want to move out. That used to be one household and now it needs to be two. Yeah, seniors want to move, divorcing. I mean, there's so many more 1 to 2 person households now than there used to be. I mean, in the past 40 years, it's like doubled.
But most of our units. 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom with 1 or 2 people, and more than half of those are 1 person.
Yeah, for sure.
There's a misfit of,
Yeah.
misfit is not probably.
Yeah, no,
the
it's
right
not,
word.
but.
Yeah.
Mismatch of, supply, yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
Won't this study eventually, I know you're not going in the future, but it's gonna get discussions into our entire societal situations?
I mean.
If you talk about it, kids, I have 5 that had to move out. And I just live in this house now with my wife. And so that's an example. They're gone. But 2 of them live next door to me. Yeah.
Come back, which means they're not starting businesses, which means that they aren't creating new jobs. And of course, we already know the issue with existing jobs. And yeah, it's a catalyst.
Getting at it's gonna blow up into a discussion of not just housing, et cetera, but society.
Mhm.
Why can't kids afford a home?
Yes.
Okay, and that alone could be a major debate and a contentious one at that. Because I'm of the school of thought that you can afford a home.
So I think it's important to keep in mind, these are all important context points, but it's a housing plan. So there are some things that are not within our control for this document, and there are some things that are. And the thing that we're looking at is the housing portion of what's going on.
And it's too early to start this conversation, but to say we're focused on housing and making affordable housing and other housing available almost takes it out of the market and forces states now,
Right.
which is not free enterprise. And not allowing people to solve their own problems, which I'm an advocate of that too. It's going to be a heavy duty discussion.
Yes, that's what we do.
So
here.
it's not going to be housing discussion, it's going to be.
But this
Life.
isn't just our region, this is statewide and it's nationwide.
Yeah, nationwide.
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 And everyone is having,
Everything.
yeah, everyone's having these conversations. Sorry, thank you for your patience.
So we're looking at the region right now with this typical model.
Any region.
Ultimately, there are some buffers, the calculations that are grounded in operational realities, right? So you can have projections for population and housing, but ultimately infrastructure is going to become a reality. Social services, fire, police, etc., schools, those were all going to be linked ultimately and actually will probably counter efforts to grow. And so, will we ultimately handle that as a region, or will that be with the municipal growth plans? Look at their realities, their situations, and what they're down.
So right now, we're just focused on a number of units and then that additional need that might or might not be units. And then the next part, once we have that, will be the allocation. And that's where we're going to come back together in this group And we will look at all of the different things that we are required to consider and the things that we might additionally want to consider from a policy perspective for how we're going to apportion out those units to each municipality. And that's where capacity comes into play. Also things like jobs and transportation. We'll talk about all of that. Then, once we've allocated out the units, we'll go into the housing growth plans. You'll have an opportunity at that point to say, yes, we like this. We're going to go with the region. And at that point, we would help you, but it would be your municipal plan to decide how and where you want to plan for those units and what your strategies are going to be. Or you can say, we don't like what RiverCog did. We're going to go our own way. And you will still get to decide. You would have to come up with your own allocation number if you don't like ours. But then you would still decide, you know, how and where and what strategies for those units.
I think to both points also, this is just one part of the equation that we're focused on.
Yeah.
Because yes, there are greater societal parts, schools, housing, jobs in the greater region, not just RiverCog. This is one part of the equation that we have some authority that we can influence policy to direct some growth and create the market conditions that allow for duplexes, whatever we wind up with build. So it's a small piece of the puzzle, but it is kind of a key component to everything. Look at where people can live and afford to work. You can't control what they're paid, so.
Yeah, I do think that as a region, though, we have people who run where each of those member communities stands in regards to these capacities.
Right.
And it has to be part of the calculation of the business process. Because ultimately, we don't want to say the RiverCog number is X. And then when we look at all the aggregate members, it's nowhere near X, right?
Yeah. Kilworth and Lime are similar.
Well, oh, yes, yeah.
All right. Are we ready to look at future now? There are very few. So projected households. There are a couple of projections available that we will have some decisions about which one of those we want to use. We picked a middle ground for sake of this conversation, but which projection is used will be a further conversation with this group. We're not expected to grow much. Anyregion is not expecting a lot of people. So you look at future population, that adds additional units. Projected rent or own just classifies the new people into a projection of what is expected. Most likely it would be a continuation of what we're already seeing. We could also use the state average as a way to weight that if we want to change what we're currently seeing. Another conversation that we can have as we start plugging in real numbers. But the point is, it doesn't change your number of people. Same for the projected income. When people are moving to the region, what are we expecting that income breakdown to be? It's not changing the number of people, just the types of units that we're planning for. For units, this one, maybe we start with vacancy maintenance. Let's start there. So we've added people. If we don't add enough units to maintain the vacancy rate, our vacancy rate will shrink. We will go back to having a constrained market. So the vacancy maintenance factor is really just saying if new people come, we want to add enough units for them, plus enough units to make sure that that vacancy rate stays at what we said we wanted it for the current population. And then the seasonal unit factor is a policy decision. I feel like nobody here is gonna like this. So if, as a strategy, you say, we know that seasonal units are important. We know that they contribute to the economy and we're always gonna have some, and some portion of units that we build are always going to be seasonal, you could add a seasonal unit buffer to say, we're gonna have, there are formulas for this, again, a conversation we can have, but you could say, we will add, based on this formula, X percentage of units that we're expecting will probably be seasonal. That way we accommodate our existing households. Yes.
So I'm gonna kill out. The Connecticut Public Health Code, when you put in a season, this does differentiate from the year round.
Mhm.
So if you can put in a unit, nobody is going to build a season and they're all done. They're not, they gotta build the same septic system for a single family home or seasonal. In the case of East Haddam, because the health code's got, you can build a septic system on its tables now, it's not that small. These lots that are not waterfront, stepping away, that's our opportunity to have them convert to year round because they're gonna, they're better off and they may be 600 square feet, they may be 800 square feet. But if they convert, that opportunity exists to add to the year-round housing. And provide them something, even though it's not deed restriction, because you can't force somebody to deed restrict the private property. But you won't see anybody specifically building seasons.
I think I should clarify, and John, you might be.
I don't think we're talking about
No,
the construction of a unit and the type of septic system. We're talking about the type of occupancy.
Yeah.
So instead of thinking about them as seasonal units, I think we should basically consider them second.
yeah, they're counted in census as someone that owns another home that is not their primary place where they live. So it could be
So you're
a
basically
regular
saying,
year-round home.
we assume no matter how many units we build, a certain percentage of them is probably going to become someone's. And we would make the policy choice that, hey, we're okay with that because we know it's important. And we're gonna, our strategy is not necessarily to reduce the number of seasonal homes because we like them. We want to have enough. It's a yes, and we would like enough for our population and we would like enough for our tourism industry or second home owners.
That's gonna drive up demand in like the shoreline towns and,
Yes.
yeah, okay.
Yep.
And the lake towns.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
But then. And put it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Homestead.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Not yet.
So maybe it's not dead. Maybe it's on the table. We can think about it. We can make multiple models, one with, one without. So that we can see what that would look like.
Doesn't that also kind of seasonal homes? There's always the potential, and vice versa, that those seasonal homes will then become full occupancy homes, which increases your housing supply.
Yeah.
As you mentioned, it's already up to the code of a regular home.
Mhm.
I say a regular home, it is a regular home, it's just.
New ones,
Yes.
he said.
Oh, that is true,
Yeah.
yes. And I mean, we all live by the shoreline, we know just how packed the shoreline is with homes already. We could probably increase the density, there's nobody from Old Safe here, right?
So Megan.
Well, I was thinking of a subset of Old Safe.
Yes. A lot of people can do it.
Enough.
There are opportunities for us here as well. We could, for example, not make it part of the official published need, but we could make it a discussion in our regional assessment. And then those towns for which it is important could include it in their growth plans. So that's also an option. Just more work for us,
Where do accessory dwelling units fit into this equation?
They could very well, so any unit that is occupied by a person is a unit. So I believe they would count.
Yeah,
Um,
unless they're illegal and hidden.
yes. There's- and that could be a strategy as well for accommodating your needs, is more ADUs.
Yeah. Okay, did we go through all the points here?
I think we did.
Okay.
All right. Any, I see a lot of blank faces, but we've had a really good discussion. So I'm feeling like there is a greater level of comfort with what we're talking about.
What was the timetable? Okay,
So we have the allocation, like the final
the
numbers,
numbers, when do we have?
June 2027.
Still.
Yeah, still June.
We'll
That-
get targets
Yeah.
from them by
December.
December 1st.
Then they'll tell us what available. Is that what that means?
No, so the way they're kind of looking at different things, our goal that we're required to post is different because it's very targeted towards the deed restricted affordable units. We are taking a broader look so that it's more comprehensive. But that's not specifically what the state was charged with looking at. So they're looking at a broad picture for the whole state. As far as we've seen so far with publicly available information, it looks like we're looking at a lot of the same things. So I think there will be a lot of general alignment, and I think in places where there is not necessarily, we will have a good reason and we can explain it.
Are we gonna have an opportunity to access any newer source data? I mean, census is already.
2024, I don't know that we'll have anything new.
Yeah, I mean,
Right.
sometimes it comes out in December.
But yeah, so if we get new data, if it becomes available before we publish, we can put in the new data. But what we'll have is a calculator like we did last year, where it's a formula and we will plug in the numbers and it will give us totals. Yeah.
So this is a very cool tool. I had kind of a question based on that question about the data itself.
Mhm.
Will we have the opportunity on this at the town level to, based on the source data, maybe make some adjustments or kind of mess around with our estimates? I'm assuming that the background data tab is what is feeding into the visuals.
Yes.
So are we gonna get a version of this that we can kind of play with and say like, this is what the census data says, but we, from our own knowledge or from the fact that I've signed off on this many permits.
Good research.
Yeah.
Are there certain things that we can kind of play with just to work on getting maybe a little more accurate at the town level, based on the tools?
I think we plan to make it available for towns to play with. However, for our regional analysis, we're planning to stick with census data only because it's the best way to compare apples to apples across towns and across data points.
And then the other just general comment was, this is like just a tool and it's one place of influencing policy, which is what the point of this event is.
And we will relate to Kevin. We were very impressed as well.
The first point Zoe made, that was our existing conditions report that you gave each of the communities, correct?
Yes.
And we were tasked with going back within our communities and having that discussion and letting you know that if anything seems off kilter, to
Yeah.
let you know at that point. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, that's
Alright.
correct. Yes.
Did you want us to send that to you like separately?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And we know, we've already heard from several towns that some of the numbers are wacky compared to what you're seeing on the ground. And we will take a look at that. However, this is still the best available data source. So it will be more context than it will necessarily feed the formula.
Like anecdotal.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But like you said earlier, this is also a snapshot.
Yeah.
You have to use a snapshot from a certain point to build it. So yeah, it's gonna be slightly off depending on what's happened since that snapshot was taken.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And we are working on sort of what did you say, like an FAQ about the data based on
Yeah.
questions that we've received.
It's kind of a deep dive into like methodology of ACS data and how that's calculated, which I don't know that we really want to get into now, but there's you can't compare this to that. You know, there's all these different like rules about how the ACS data works, which is, you know, what we're going with because it's topically relevant and we can look at all your communities from the same level.
It's used also by, you know, HUD, it's used by other states. It's, you know, standard practice in planning and this type of work as well. It's not, I think something that might not come across with an exercise like this is we are talking generally about having a balance of households and units, but we're not saying that this is exactly the number of housing units and households that you will have. We're saying based on the data trends and what we have available, this is a reasonable target for you to plan for. Yes.
So if we take this, say from 2024, that's the latest ACS data, and that's the number that we make the determination off of.
Yes.
Are we getting credit for things we planned for from 2024 on?
Define credit.
So we already planned to partly hit that number.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah. So anything from that time is a new unit that's come online. However, the state is not necessarily, you know, per their guidance, going to be tracking exactly how many units you have put online. What they're looking for is, what did you say your strategies were to increase housing? And have you done them? Are you making progress towards doing the things you said you were going to do in order to hit these numbers?
So it's an engine that runs on good faith.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that could be as simple as saying you're gonna adjust your regulations and actually adjusting your regulations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so novel.
Yeah.
But, you know, also there is an understanding that not everything, as we were saying earlier, not everything is within the town's control to do. So we're looking at our piece of the puzzle. What is within our control? What can we change? And are we making a good faith effort to make those changes? And that's all we're being asked.
Quick question.
Yeah.
We'll talk about this with Eliza a little bit, but we're working on some new innovative zoning to increase housing stock. Should we hold off until this plan comes out so we can get credit for it?
I think you need to, honestly. I think you could say in your update, this is an innovative strategy that from, you know, that from the time that data was collected, we have implemented and we expect it to change. I think that's
enough.
Yeah.
Assuming, we go back to the ADU discussion, assuming a town like Old Lyme relaxes its ADU numbers, we can have more ADUs. Is there a way we can figure out what we anticipate that's going to do to the bottom line? I mean, right now, obviously, we have very restrictive ADU regulations. We're looking at loosening, but I don't know how much credit that would give us if we did that.
I think we would look, it would sort of be a mini build out, I would think. Like we are allowing ADUs in all of these areas. If everybody did it, then this is how many new would come online. You could add to that like a reality
What
layer.
they're talking about for points for that? Though?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, points, credit.
Credit,
But, yeah,
they
you-
were, that didn't go through.
That's different though. Those are your hue points, right? Is that what you're thinking of?
Yes, yeah, that's fine.
So, I can't speak to that. I'm not positive. Maybe our friends in the back might know.
I don't think John was listening.
For ADUs, there was mention of the brief. That goes through that happening.
I don't think it passed this. No, I don't think any one, please. Well, other than.
In the law.
The governor's views of the. Transit oriented something, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but yeah, no ADUs.
So we don't get a direct benefit or.
Unless it's restricted.
Unless it's restricted, so we're in the same place we were.
Yeah.
Up to the ADU, right, for that, to help kind of incentivize stuff that.
No, we sure did. There was a question over here where we're trying to skip the goal line, talking about doing what we did. But we're looking for advantage, but as of right now, you're saying,
Yeah.
unless it's deed restricted, we don't get a direct advantage
Not to comment too much on ours.
That's how I feel.
But we shouldn't really be, worrying about big ones, like, we got bigger picture.
Yeah, that was Vegas' point.
What if, this is done, we do the, distribution of.
It's happening.
And make the plan, do everything you say you're gonna do. Nobody, no one builds them.
I mean, I think at that point, the state is not penalizing you for that. But I think if it is something that you are in good faith wanting to do, you would look at those strategies and you would say, okay, obviously this isn't working. What can we tweak? What's going wrong? And then revise your strategies.
Thing. No, so for affordable housing, it's not just a tweak. I mean, affordable housing, it's very difficult to build. Because of the financial underpinnings of doing it, and you may make this great plan of what you can do, but unless the town or the state or someone's gonna put in millions and millions of dollars, you're not gonna. You can make the plan, but no one's gonna want to do it.
I think it's very fair in your strategies, and this will come when we get into the housing growth plan part, which is 2027 to 2028 after all of this. When we get into the plan part and we're talking strategies, we'll be talking about what the towns can do. But I think it's perfectly fair to say this would go a lot better if we had X funding or if we had X infrastructure or so on. And we think this is the entity that should provide that. And, I think that's perfectly fair to put in. But I also think if there are opportunities for you to get funding that are available now, putting that in as well. Say we're going to pursue this funding opportunity to assist with this thing is a strategy. You would just have to then pursue it.
And a quick plug for the Council on Housing Development, which is a state entity that was created by this bill. So that also created the Housing Growth Fund, which has yet to actually be funded. So we're talking to our legislators to make sure that the next several round of bond funds and things like that, put a bunch of money into the housing growth fund, which will then direct it to municipalities and individual projects to extend sewer lines, extend water lines, provide supplemental funds to housing development or whatever. But that is, in theory, the state is putting housing growth funds to assist those efforts.
And it's incumbent upon us to think about how we would use those efficiently and put in our applications, have a game plan ready so that when funds are available, you're ready to ask for them. What we're doing, we're working in good faith to make a plan to make changes that we want to make, right? So think about it the way you would do any plan. You're baking a cake, you look at the recipe, you follow the steps, and then you bake your cake, right? That's kind of what we're doing. We're thinking about the ingredients that we need, the steps that we're going to take, and then we follow the steps after we've gathered the ingredients. And we can only do what's within our control.
I'm going to move on just in the interest of time because I see we don't have a lot.
And everybody's losing their.
Everybody is losing. There's chocolate and cheese. Help yourself. I think I'm going to probably gloss over this one a little bit. So we'll just talk about the impact of some of the inputs that we already looked at. So obviously there's nuance here, but this can be useful for discussion. So you'll see the data inputs such as seasonal units, overcrowding, homelessness, projected population. Those can increase your total need by either increasing the number of households or decreasing the number of units. There's other inputs such as group quarters or lower vacancy rate that decrease the total need by decreasing the number of households or increasing the number of units. And then the last category are the data inputs that don't change the number of units needed. So that's simply grouping the population or units into categories. So this is a useful exercise that may demonstrate a need, but it does not translate into a needed number of units. Now here's an example of how we might use the categorical input like income that we already talked about, which is a required input into the needs assessment. So in this illustration, the total households are grouped into AMI categories. The distribution is then applied to the new housing units, helping us understand how total housing need would be distributed. So you may have heard of the calculation of the structural mismatch or spatial mismatch, which compares the number of existing units in each income category with the number of households in each income category, and found the difference to be the number of needed units. Megan already mentioned this was kind of a contentious element in the Eco Northwest housing needs assessment done for the state last year. So, however, as illustrated, income is categorical, as is affordability, and therefore doesn't change the existing number of households or the existing number of units. So it should not be assumed that the mismatch requires new units. For any additional households not covered by the new units, additional strategies may be required, and this will be handled separately in the needs assessment to avoid confusion. So our key takeaways, housing need consists of multiple components and each measures a different condition or trend. The resulting estimate is influenced by data inputs and policy choices. Understanding the methodology allows us to ask better questions, interpret the result more carefully, and build a stronger foundation for productive community discussions. Housing need is a policy decision that's informed by data. This exercise was intended to support a shared understanding of the influence that different data inputs have on housing need and guide us toward a preferred policy decision. So moving forward, we're going to use today's discussion to draft an initial housing needs formula, incorporate feedback into the local existing conditions reports, and provide a discussion packet for you on the needs assessment formula for local discussion and feedback. Your homework is to establish your local working group if you haven't already done so, and submit existing conditions feedback before our next meeting in September, which is the 22nd. I may have erroneously told some of you it was the 29th when we met individually. Sorry. And your participation and feedback will help us shape a methodology that's understandable, defensible, and responsive.
Could the working group just be your planning and zoning?
It can be. Yeah, that's going to look different for every town. Does anyone have any questions?
Did you just repeat all of that?
Sure. Do you want us to just go back to the first slide? It's a lot.
We can send this out as well.
Please.
But we will walk through, like Eliza said, we'll put a packet together that has this information, that has some discussion questions for feedback.
And are we gonna have access to Kevin's school spreadsheet?
Oh, yeah. He would be devastated if we did not give it to him.
He does such a good job.
He was very excited, actually, when we were like, can we do this? And he was like, yes, we can.
What else?
Is there anything else? I feel like we've stunned everybody.
Yeah.
Do we feel okay? All right.
So just like September, October, November, then what can you kind of synthesize what this group, what we'll be looking at and what we need to do?
Sure. So our next step when we're putting the packets together, we're gonna plug in real data when we give it to you using the formula that we talked about. We're going to give you the background information on that data so that you can kind of look at it and hopefully answer questions or ask questions of us as far as what we're using, and hopefully we'll all get on the same page with a formula. That will give us a total number of needed units. Once we have that in hand, we'll have another group like this, and we'll start putting, hopefully Kevin will make us another cool tool for Anyregion, and we can talk about inputs for allocating the units to the different towns. Once we figure out how we want to do the allocation of units, we'll do the same thing. We'll plug in real numbers, we'll put a packet together, we'll give it to you for feedback. And I think that's as far as we will expect to be in the next couple of months. Is it going better than last year, though?
Definitely. Although I kind of miss the sticky notes, I mean, it was very quaint.
You
so.
were there from the beginning.
Oh, that was
Yeah.
painful.
Yeah, for
That
those
was-
of you that are newer, we did do the regional housing needs assessment process once already. Without the cool, we literally had taped like butcher paper onto the walls and we're putting up the factors and debating them. So,
I forgot
yeah.
to pick up my kids for school.
yeah.
It's not great.
So those of you that are new to this process may feel like we've somehow skipped a step because we kind of did
Well,
in this day.
yeah, I think what we learned from the last go round, you remember for those of you who were here, we did all three at the same time. We were trying to parse out, okay, which factor goes in need determination, which factor goes in allocation of units, which factor is really more about local accommodation. And that got really messy and confusing for people. And so now between the statute and our established understanding, we're separating them out and we're looking at certain factors at different times to try and narrow the universe that we all have to digest at once.
So other than a learning experience, we can't really use the work that we did for the prior 2 years.
Should be the same.
It's close.
Is it? Close?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's close.
It's really similar.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yes.
Because I remember you wanting to do that was because they didn't tell you what to do, so you wanted to get ahead of them.
Yes.
We spent 3 months figuring out the formula this time.
We did.
Now we have a formula.
Yeah, and one of the emails, and I'm happy to resend that I sent out, did include like the final report on the Reno that we've done in the past, which is also on our website. So
Yeah. So we're starting with an understanding of what worked last time, which I think is a good basis for what we did today. There are some things that we had to adjust because of the statute and also I think just from some lessons learned. And we're starting with a group where I would say a quarter of you at least have been through this process before, which helps tremendously.
Any more questions for Eliza or Megan? I'd like to make a motion to adjourn then. Can I get a second? Meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
thank
everybody.
you.
Good job. It's a lot of work putting this together.
So I presented to the selectmen and we decided, working on a study committee with the idea that we've already done the assessment and the next steps. We didn't do something. I was supposed to present it with zoning. Because they had a big public hearing. Took up the whole everything. So, still, I mean, good. Forward, excuse me. Everyone that was doing it anymore. Well,
The first part though,
it's hard.
We knew when I got to. It was like.
So. Say, oh, well, yeah. But. You're a great worship area. We're all saying, right? That was, I was actually going to tell me. No, make it to the. Oh, I wasn't just. But I understood it. The needs. Oh, yeah, it's. That's the two. Spotted fire. Great. Yeah. It's on the needs.
Probably turn it off.
Yeah. I can see myself there. It's great.